Order and roll call.
Commissioner DeVries?
Here.
Chair Frederickson?
Here.
Commissioner Goss?
Here.
Commissioner Hunsicker is not here. Commissioner Keith?
Here.
Commissioner McCoy?
Here.
Vice Chair Shores?
Here.
We've got a quorum.
May everyone stand for Pledge of Allegiance, and Charmaine, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. All righty. Approval of minutes, the regular meeting minutes of March 13th, 2018.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made, a motion has been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Good. All righty. Call to the public. Comments from the public. Those wishing to address the commission should fill out a request forms in advance. Action taken as a result of public comments will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for consideration and decision at a later time. Comments from the public will be restricted to items not on the agenda. There will be no comments allowed that advertise for a particular person or group. Comments should be limited to no longer than 3 minutes. Any comments from the public? All righty, thank you. Richard, pass council action.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, at the last council meeting, there were 3 items that the council reviewed from your March P&Z meeting. First item was CUP 18-002. This is a CUP for a day program at a residence at 3996 Lindsay Avenue. That was approved. The rezoning case for the Catherine Heidenreich Center was also approved. And the text amendment to disallow the landscape fabric from being used as screening materials, that was also approved by the council.
Any comments?
Okay,
Thank you, Richard.
thanks.
Okay, under old business, discussion on tiny homes, being that this will probably be a good lengthy discussion, we're going to move that to the last under the new business. And then new business, we have zoning ordinance text amendment case Z018-0004. A request from Mojave County for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance of the city of Kingman. The proposed text amendment will further clarify certain allowances for judicial centers, including maximum building height, parking requirements, as well as related definitions in various sections of the zoning ordinance. Sylvia?
Good evening. We do have the applicant present too, if you have any questions for them. Okay, so here we have the text amendment related to sections 12, 13, and 22 of the City of Kingman zoning ordinance related to judicial centers. And I will clarify, because I had put in my staff report 31, we're not amending section 31 at all. Apologize for that. So Mojave County has been working on the design and architecture of the remodeling and expansion of the downtown Kingman Superior Courthouse, also known as the Law and Justice Center project. The proposed new judicial center will be 101,320 square feet, 64 foot tall, and require 203 off-street parking spaces. The proposed new judicial center will be located at 401 Spring Street, which is Zone C2, Commercial Service Business. And this amendment is not an approval or denial of the Law and Justice Center project. It's really an amendment for all judicial centers. And here's the project proposal with a nice rendition of how it will look once it's all completed. The applicant is Stephen Latosky, Public Works Director from Mojave County. And the amendment will clarify the following: definition of judicial centers, parking requirements, allowed building height. And again, this amendment will apply to all judicial centers proposed within city limits. On December 2nd, 2014, we had an ordinance approved by council amending section 22 of the zoning ordinance to establish a minimum parking requirement of 1 parking space per 350 square feet of building area for judicial centers. And then we came back in February 7th of 2017 and amended section 22 to increase that to 500, 1 parking space per 500 square feet of building area for judicial centers. Now, although these specific amendments were approved and processed, the amendments were specific to off-street parking space requirements for judicial centers and did not clarify other requirements. So the proposed amendments will address judicial center requirements throughout the zoning ordinance. Okay, so due to not having a specific definition for judicial centers, it made it hard for the applicant and staff to determine what specific requirements were for the new judicial center. So the first thing we decided to do was add a definition to section 2 of the rules and definitions of the zoning ordinance. Now, we did have this definition in 22, but we needed it to start at the beginning, basically in our definition. So we added judicial center, and that shall mean a building or buildings used for courts of law or judges and judicial administration. And it was unclear whether a judicial center is an allowed use in the C2 zoning district, even though it is similar to allowed uses such as offices in that district. So in order to clarify that, we also wanted to recommend adding judicial centers as an allowed use in section 12 in the commercial community business section. For the building height in the C2 zoning district, section 12.340 of the zoning ordinance has a maximum height allowance of 50 feet for buildings in this district. The tallest building in this area is the existing courthouse, where the top of the dome measures 53 feet. The proposed new judicial center will be approximately 64 feet, and the applicant has requested to amend this section to allow for a maximum height of 75 feet for judicial centers. Staff recommends adding the maximum height of 75 feet for judicial centers in both C2 and C3 zoning districts. The reason we added C3 zoning district is because all uses allowed in C2 are allowed in C3. So we're just making it clear. For the parking requirements, although we have those few text amendments approved, we actually have a proposal here for to allow for both on and off-street parking to meet our parking requirements. So the proposed judicial center is currently required to have 203 off-street parking spaces by our current regulations. And the proposed parking is 207, but it includes both on and off-street parking. So upon conducting some research, this requested amendment would be similar to the parking allowance that we currently have in our historic overlay district. And if the historic overlay district is expanded to include the courthouse, this parking requirement would apply. However, there's no certain time frame we have of when we're going to be expanding the historic overlay district, so we're recommending placing similar verbiage in section 22, which is our parking standards. So the parking requirements in the historic overlay district allows for an on and off-street parking to be considered as part of meeting the parking requirement calculations. And staff recommends amending the section to insert this allowance. So a summary of staff recommendations is to amend section 2, the rules and definitions, to add a definition for judicial centers, amend section 12 to add judicial centers as an allowed use, amend section 12.340 for the building height, and also 13.340, which is building height in both C2 and C3, to add a criteria that building height for judicial centers not exceed 75 feet, and then to amend section 22.330 for number of parking spaces required to add the following. For judicial centers, on and off-street parking can be considered in any parking calculation. Necessary parking shall be calculated within 300 feet of the nearest site property boundary. So do you have any questions for me? Because I've made it so that it was more focused on the text amendment itself, but you may have additional questions for me or the applicant.
So, I have questions. Yes, so you're planning on adding more parking, or are you just adding more square footage and not allowing for more parking?
Actually, I think there's a little of both going on. We have additional building being built for the new courthouse. We have existing parking, but there's off-street and on-street parking existing, and then there's additional parking being created as well. So it's actually a combination of both. And I actually have a map at the end I brought just in case here, and it's hard to see, but it was in your packet too. And Steve, you may be able to help me out with showing where some of the parking is. But I know a lot of the parking is proposed on Spring Street. I can't really see this map myself, so apologize for that. I could go back to one more slide though that I had. So on-site parking spaces are proposed as 78, and then there's a secure garage with 11 spaces, and Spring Street will have 118.
I have one quick question. Is that amount of parking available now, or is this proposed to be? And if it's,
Yeah, I
if
think
it's
it's
not
both.
available, where is it gonna come from?
It's existing and proposed. Okay, I'm gonna ask Mr. Latotsky to come up, because he definitely has more of the definite answers for the proposed parking here. Go right ahead.
Morning, or good evening, I'm sorry. Chairman Frederickson, members of the commission, and Commissioner McCoy, very good questions. This is just a fantastic project being put forward by the county, and I'll use round numbers, but currently the existing Superior Courthouse, the historic Superior Courthouse, which is in now its second century of operations, is approximately 36,000 square feet. And this project proposes a new building in the amount of 64,000 square feet, bringing the entire project to the approximate 101,000 square feet that Ms. Schaefer mentioned. So as a result, yes, parking provisions have to be accounted for, and this particular text amendment is associated with the parking in the context of the county's respectful categorization of this Law and Justice Center as a Justice Center exempt land use under the C2 zoning. However, it's very imperative to note that Mojave County is making provisions to account for both a combination of on-street, namely Spring Street, and off-street parking, which is available currently adjacent Pine Street. The county has a lot by which it will be restriping on the north side of Pine Street for additional off-street parking. That'll be namely your employees and such. So as a result, the overall project proposal, which requires under city ordinance 207 parking spaces, can be accounted for through a combination of on-street parking on Spring Street as well as off-street parking, which flanks namely Pine Street. One point I do want to emphasize on the parking issue is it's very imperative to consider the type of patron to the Law and Justice Center. And that is, there's been best practice engineering studies performed that really estimate the extent of a walking distance that patrons of a Law and Justice Center would really be receptive to. And in this case, the best practice has found really a radius of parking of 400 feet maximum. And at 3.5 feet per second walking speed, your normal walking speed, that's a good 2-minute walk. And if you can kind of consider the type of patron, to a Law and Justice Center, a courthouse, if you will, this really aligns very well with the county's proposal to utilize both on-street and off-street parking, which, as Ms. Schaefer pointed out, there is sufficient capacity existing to accommodate both under the Mojave County plan. And it would really align very well with the target best practice for maximum walking distance. What we're requesting is basically an accommodation of all parking needs within 300 feet, not 400 feet, but 300 feet. So I hope that kind of covers most of your important points with your question.
I have a question. How many current employees are there for this, for the justice system?
May have to pull in our court administrator, Kip Anderson, for that.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, Kip Anderson. I work across the street every day, so we have about 70 employees over there, counting our judges and our staff, roughly. Now, they're not always there. People have time off, paid time off and stuff, so they come and they go. Today, we have a conference going on down in the Bullhead area, so we have 3 of our courtrooms that are dark today. So today is a little bit lighter day, but generally we have about 70 staff.
And is that just for the justice
This is for the Superior Court.
Superior
Right now,
Court.
the Justice Court, and Mr. Vries can probably tell you more about the Justice Court, but right now it's just the Superior Court that's over there, and that's the Superior Court staff. What's happening is once we build the new building and we move the Superior Court staff into the new building, then we remodel the existing building, the annex, the entrance area, and then the Justice Court staff would move over at that point, which would be hopefully in 2 or 3 years, depending on how quickly, the construction's done. But we have about 70 staff there. A lot of the other people that are in the building are the county attorney's office, the public defender's office, the legal defender's office. They're all situated in buildings around here. They have their own parking. So they park by their buildings and then they just walk to the courthouse. So they don't use up any of the existing parking spots.
Okay, so this 207 parking spaces that are allocated for the court system here, how many are for staff?
Well, ideally, we would use, about 70 of those on any given day for staff. Now, when we build the new building, we're going to have some secured parking for the judicial officers. There will be 11 spots there. They won't all be used. We only have 6 judges in the courthouse. So we'll have some of those that are on the back side of the building in the secured area. So they wouldn't be using, well, those are counted in the count, Steve. So that would be part of the count. But, yeah, so approximately 70 or so would be used up by staff, depending on how many are there. The rest then would be made available for the public who come and go. A lot of the people that come to the courthouse will come, drop off papers, file documents. They come, they're in, and they're out. We have jurors that come on Tuesdays. Generally, we have a jury trial. Sometimes we'll have another jury trial on Wednesday, so then we might have 30 or 40 jurors that are showing up for the jury trial selection process. If they get selected, then there's only usually 12 that stay. And so, Tuesdays, Wednesdays might be a little busier days for us. And then Thursdays, Fridays, again, they tend to drop back off, and we'll just have mainly our staff and then a few people who are coming maybe to get a passport, a marriage license, or to file papers. We've also been working with currently we have an agreement with the Catholic Church to use their parking lot. We've been renegotiating with them, meeting with them to continue to use that. That's not included in this count. So there's 30 or 40 spaces available there. So we're hoping that we'll continue to have an agreement with the Catholic Church to use their parking lot. Get an agreement that'll be rotating on a 10-year basis.
So when this new justice system is open for business, and we have the old courthouse and the new court system, and we have 207 parking spaces, what is the total square footage between that? Because aren't you supposed to have 1 parking space per
That's the
100?
That's the numbers
square
they gave you, 203.
And that's what it breaks down to when they're
yes.
both open?
But remember, we'll have we'll have at least 1 empty courtroom in the new building. The old building we're moving out of, that one will be virtually empty. A lot of that will be empty. We're gonna have a big jury assembly area that we're using where my office is and some of our courtrooms are now. So we're not adding staff, we're not growing. All we're doing is moving into a new building that will be more secure, that will be updated, and that will allow us to, function like we should be. Currently, the old building is great to look at, and I love my office. I hate to actually move out of it. I have a window that looks down 4th Street, but, I can hear the in custody sitting on a bench outside my office, and they're out in the hallways. You know, we just aren't operating the way we should be. We've got to move into a new building. So, but yeah, we'll move into there, and then a lot of the building, we'll have some offices and a few staff in there, and then at some point we'll be able to then do some remodeling, and then the Justice Court and the two judges over there and the staff will move over and move into a newly renovated part of the existing building. So, but no, we're not adding any more staff other than when the Justice Court comes over, then there will be some additional staff at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I did have one question. When I think I was talking with Gary, I think that was our first meeting when we had this issue last year.
Yeah, I recused myself then, and I will again.
Correct. Yeah. But I guess my question more, so a year ago when you came with the request for the parking and we lent support and made a text amendment to support the parking, I think at that point it was still for the county not sure it was definitely going to go into Kingman, and we made the accommodation to encourage that to be done there. So I know it's a couple other accommodations now, which is fine because we let our support for that before, but just curious, are you firmed up now that the building will be done here in Kingman, or is it still up in the air?
No, it's pretty firm. In fact, we just had some, go ahead. Do you want to? We just had, we at our, not the last board meeting, the board meeting before, there was some talk about paying off the jail facility. They're paying it off early. That allowed them to save some interest money. The supervisors identified the fact that that was great because that money then would be available to help build the Law and Justice Center, the new courthouse. So I believe we're on pretty firm ground. Obviously, until we get the board to make that final approval, things could change. But I believe most of the supervisors, if not all of them, are behind this project. And this location has been identified. We've got the architectural plans. Everything's been completed. So if we can get these amendments approved, get to the city council, get their approval, then the next step would be go back to the board and go out for bid. So, you had anything else to add?
If I just may add, actually for the commission's information, one thing, the county has already invested over 7 figures in a design for the Law and Justice Center to be sited right here adjacent to the existing Superior Court. So that is obviously a firm indication of the Board of Supervisors' commitment toward making this, in fact, a legacy project for downtown Kingman. And one last closing note on the parking. Besides being compliant with the city zoning ordinance requirement for parking demand, Mojave County also performed a parking demand study specific to the existing Superior Court because we wanted to ascertain exactly under a more robust operational day, and I believe you had virtually all of your courts in operation with jurors present, et cetera. We found that the actual parking demand per space was even more, I should say, a little less than the ordinance adopted by the city. So not only are we meeting the ordinance, but we're meeting what is typically the parking demand and then some specific to our use. So we're not trying to mix apples and oranges where we're gauging, well, what is Prescott experience or what is Maricopa County experience. We went out and counted, based on an engineering study, exactly what the demand is per space at the Kingman Superior Court so that we can extrapolate that to this new development and ensure that we have adequate parking. Because at the end of the day, all the professionals involved in this project want to ensure that there is adequate capacity, and it would make us look bad, of course, if there wasn't. And what a great compliment as well to downtown Kingman, in the sense that this is going to be a fully functioning facility during the normal business day, weekdays, and it'll be a fantastic compliment to allowing those folks that frequent the facility to utilize the plethora of restaurants in downtown Kingman, as well as then have that parking supply for the adjacent land uses, the places of worship on the weekends when parking will not be needed by the court, as well as on special event weekends for the downtown. So a perfect complement. It's called shared parking. So it's a wonderful application.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, I've never seen it. It has never looked. I've never seen it overcrowded in front of there. I mean, so parking seems to be pretty adequate.
Never been there on juror days.
Yeah, and well, juries, yeah, it'd probably be an exception, but I'm down there a lot, and, I mean, it seems very adequate to me, except when Warren Jeffs was there, then it was booked. Anyways, that was just happened.
Any further questions for the?
I would just add, you know, we try to manage the jurors, the jury trials, so we're not booking too many in a day. It's just hard to manage them that way, and certainly it impacts the parking and stuff as well. So the clerk of the court, Verlyn Tennell, manages our juries. You've probably seen her name if you've gotten a jury summons, but we try to manage that and work with that with our judges. So, and then just so I don't get in trouble with my boss, Judge Gertler, who would have been here, is out of state right now, and he's certainly wanted to let you know how important this project is, and his apologies that he wasn't able to be here tonight as well. He would have liked to have been here to share comments.
He was the gentleman that was here last year?
Correct,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Any further questions?
One more. You don't anticipate that you would need more on-street parking than what's already available,
No.
I would assume?
No, I mean, 20, 30 years, there will be some growth, but we're also moving more in, you know, with more electronic filing. We now have mandatory civil filing. If you file a civil case, at least for all the attorneys, it's mandatory electronic filing, so they don't have to come down to the courthouse anymore until they obviously show up for court. But they don't have to come down and file their cases. And that will move on to our family law, that will move on to our probate, that will go on to our criminal. So that would perhaps even lessen the demand on people coming down to the courthouse. Pretty soon there'll be a virtual judge, right? So they won't even have to show up anymore. Hopefully I'll still be able to show up to work. But no, to answer your question, no, I don't believe so. I think we're probably at the max we're at now, and it'll take quite a while before we get that much bigger to add more judicial officers.
Is there availability for space for a parking garage if at some point in time that?
Well, you know, the old jail, not the historic jail, but the old jail that sits on Pine Street, there's been talk about, you know, potentially demolishing that. That would certainly free up more parking. I can't necessarily speak to that, but that would be a great place to.
Be an expensive piece of property for parking space.
For a
yeah.
parking space, but their potential is to maybe do something with that down the road as well.
So you're not landlocked, you do have the availability of.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Any questions? Yeah. I'll open this up to any comments from the public. I see. Please come forward and state your name, please.
Hello, my name's Siri Tabbert. I'm a Kingman resident. I just wanted to make the comment that I've seen Spring Street up and down, both sides filled many times, plus the 30 cars where they're going to build the new judicial center. So people who aren't down here all the time don't realize the congestion. And I do feel that this has been a major increase in the 1 year since they brought the idea forward and said everything was going digital. So there's more people parking in that area as time goes by. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would just add, I spoke to the two neighbors that have the houses, Kathy and Manuel behind us. I did go and speak with them. I also went over to the Episcopal Church and let them know what we were doing, and they didn't seem to have any real concerns. I mean, we talked about some things and growth and things, but I did reach out to them and let them know and told them they could come to us and work with them as well. So we're hopefully, they didn't seem to have any real concerns about us building the building there, so.
I think from my recollection, I remember you guys coming to us 2017, aren't we bumping up the spaces probably by 100 over what there is?
Right.
I don't know that, but I know it was a good bump.
Right, with the restriping and the reorganizing of it, yes, that's correct.
So that won't happen till the completion
Right.
So right now, we're at whatever it is, and then when the completion of the
Got nothing.
courthouse, then it'll get bumped to total of 2.7.
Right, right. Thanks.
All right. Any further questions from the public? All right, may I open it up to the staff?
I have to recuse myself, so.
Sure.
Fair enough.
I recall that recusal from you as well, yeah. So
Right, I'll get in trouble with Kip over there.
I guess just one, for Gary, myself, and when Councilwoman Kress was in a previous capacity sitting up here, we had this issue last year, and we did, I guess we've had an advantage of hearing the parking discussion before, because that was what it was at that time, was parking, getting the spacing right. Recall one of the large items was in the new square footage, that a lot of that was court space, not office space, so we took that into consideration when we decided to go ahead and change the parking amendment to allow it. And we did have a good bit of discussion around support for the project and trying to get it in downtown Kingman versus some of the other locations that were available to be selected at that time. So, Sylvia, appreciate the work you did on that to put that together for us. For me, there's nothing in what's being presented tonight in terms of definitions and cleaning things up that goes outside the principle we had last year. And again, the parking one's already been decided that we went ahead with that last year. So if these are the final steps to take to make sure it's clear for the county to make the investment in downtown Kingman to get the building on, I don't have any objections to it.
I don't either.
I'm in agreement.
In agreement, too.
Is any further? I ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the change, the text amendment change.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Okay, a motion is made and seconded. Is there any further discussions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That decision. Thank you. Okay, item B, review and discussion regarding barbed wire fencing. The commission will review and discuss the current regulations concerning allowances for barbed wire fencing. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. At the last P&Z meeting, we discussed very briefly the issue of barbed wire fencing and where it would be allowed in the city of Kingman. We were asked to bring back some information, and that's what this presentation is about. Let's see. So currently, we do have quite a few fences around town that have barbed wire, or the concertina wire, or the other types of barbed wire on top of the fences. Currently, the zoning ordinance allows in any residentially zoned lot that's at least 40,000 square feet or greater, can have a barbed wire fence up to 5 feet in height in the side or rear yard. If it's a lot that's zoned O, recreational open space, and is at least 40,000 square feet, it can be on all property sides. For the commercial or industrial uses, which I think the commission is really interested in, barbed wire fencing is allowed in any district on top of a fence that is at least 6 feet in height. 24 inches of barbed wire may be placed on top. Other types of barbed wire fencing is not permitted. So it's a few examples of fencing that we have around town with barbed wire, both the straight barbed wire as well as the concertina wire that you see around town. So this is just a discussion item at this point, basically just to give us staff direction and whether you would like to see any further research on the topic or what changes you'd like to see, or you could take no further action at this time. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Was that top on Rich? You can have a barbed wire fence on a house?
You can if it's on a lot that's at least 40,000 square feet or greater, but only in the side or rear yard. But I think we're talking about again, it's only 5 feet in height, so we're not talking about the commercial type barbed wire. We're talking about, more like what you see on a ranch or something like that.
Yeah, sorry, I was just picturing a house with
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
a back
I realized
wall
you were
with
talking
a,
about like ranching property.
Right, I think that's what's intended for.
but it's currently not by specific areas around the city. It's more by zoning requirement, or by the word zone, if it's a C zone, extra.
It basically says that any commercial or industrial use in any district is permitted to have barbed wire on top of a fence that is at least 6 feet in height.
Right, so what is, you're trying to amend it, so are you trying to not allow residential, but okay with commercial, or what do you?
Well, that's, the commission asked me to bring the information to you, and it's open for discussion, what you'd like to see change, if anything.
There was just one particular spot we were at doing the joint city meeting downtown, and it kind of what perceived to be a nicer area of the downtown area, and there was a fence there with barbed wire on it, and thought that didn't offer the
Aesthetics.
best look coming off if you're traveling through town for it, and
Yeah, and I don't understand that, but worse, I mean, there's bars on the windows is way worse.
well, yeah.
Way worse.
Right.
You walk through, I mean, bars in the city, seeing bars in the city, I think we were talking about that earlier, you get out.
I think principally that was kind of the thought process behind too on this particular subject was is it something we wanted to clean up from an aesthetic standpoint to what type of offering were we trying to have, but I'm not necessarily saying so much around the existing community. I think we're pretty well, those that have lived here for a long period of time, certainly much longer than I have a pretty good feel for where they like to go around and partake in the offerings that the city has for them, but it was more on kind of some of that tourist or travel through that you're trying to get for some of the businesses down there. I just brought up the question of whether that offers the right looking, kind of the same thing you're pointing out about barred windows. Is that something that's encouraging to someone to stop and spend their dollars?
I was thinking that barbed wire, I think barbed wire already has with insurance and stuff, there's already, you have to have special insurance and everything. You can't just put barbed wire up. I can't put it up on my storage units. I have to have, because there's like a huge liability already, so you have to, because you can get chopped up, sliced up and stuff, so I know, like, I have to, so I think there's already some drawback. People have to get special insurance and stuff to allow that, or they have an insurance company that will allow that. But
I think what we're trying to do is look at when people come through Kingman on tour buses, or they come through Kingman on vacation. It's the main 66 through there, and I think what we were trying to determine here was where are we allowing barbed wire, and why are these certain businesses using it? I mean, are the crime rates that high, or is it, I don't think that that's the case, but I think we just need to evaluate how we want people to view our community when they arrive.
Because this is right in the downtown area. So we're going to be spending all this money to put up an arch downtown for them to drive through and see this barbed wire there. I mean, it's kind of sending, two different messages here, come visit, but,
Stay out.
Yeah, pretty much.
That barbed wire has been there since 1965, 1970, so
I mean,
But times are changing,
yeah,
too.
and I think it depends on your business, because you have people that sell guns, and, there's different things that, like, just saying, like, the storage units, for instance, they get broken into, and you have to prevent that in some sort of way. So I think on commercial, I mean, residential, of course, is different, but in commercial, there's a lot of things. You have, not in town, maybe not, but drugs, or, medical drugs or whatever, different situations in a commercial building, you will need that. You'll need that for your insurance purposes.
And I think storage units, I think they do tend to be one of the areas, the target for people attacking, could see things like that, of that particular nature. And I think once you cross Airway and you continue to progress down 66 in the direction of Peach, since I drive it every day, There's areas there, if there's a different feel as you go through there, it becomes more commercial, more industrial, and I think expectation level isn't, it changes at that point. I don't think it stands out there, but right in the middle of the downtown where we're trying to, I hope, it feels like the direction we're trying to go is try to have some revitalization down there and different ones. I just question whether that's the best security measure in that specific area of town as we
Well,
move in
then,
that direction.
right down the street is where all those tires are, and it has all of that
That's a different,
siding around their fence. So it's like, you're coming in, and right away, you're gonna see this. So you go down the street about a block more, and then you see all these tires and, and.
Well, may I ask Richard or Gary,
There, thank you.
has the other commissions that are involved with downtown, has any of that been discussed or even thought of with those other commissions that you're aware of?
I'm not aware that Historic Preservation has discussed this at this time. But, if I could offer something is maybe, if the concern is the downtown aesthetics is possibly, especially if the Historic Overlay District were to expand, maybe that would be within the boundaries of the HOD, maybe you would not want to allow that type of fencing. No.
Yeah, and I'd be okay. For my part, I know I asked the question, but I think I would be fine with that if that's the approach, because it sounds like there's some other things that group that's looking at that overlay district that are looking for a particular theme or some items and requirements. I'd be perfectly fine if they want to address it down in there, and then I'll step back.
I think the easiest thing to do is ask Frontier if they would mind addressing it themselves, because they're pretty open to what the community needs and wants, and have been more than
And that could be the
approachable.
case, Scott. I mean, absolutely could be there. This was more from a background question, just what do we have out there? Is there anything out there that specifies one way or another from a requirement standpoint? So armed with that background knowledge, yeah, we could probably approach that specific way. And, the historic group that's working on the downtown, the historic areas, maybe that's the right group to approach.
And the same with the tire places. It kind of depends on how it's approached.
Right.
And I don't see a need to rewrite an ordinance and
No, but I think what he was trying to do is see how widespread the ordinance was as far as what was being allowed, so that we're not heading in a backwards direction and we're heading in a forward direction. Because
Exactly.
right now, it does not look pleasant when you come. And so I think what he was trying to do is say, if it's
I
there.
can understand what he's trying to say. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, it's a good point. I'm just saying, you're right. You don't want to see that, say, you want to make comfortable that we're not that high crime area that people try to say we are. Some people try to say we are online and stuff like that, per capita. But
I had a comment from the public. State your name, please.
Commissioners, Wes Maroney. I'm a resident. I have 39 years of experience in law enforcement. I started as an officer and wound up retiring as the chief of police. If you remove that fence, I guarantee you every one of those trucks will be broken into within 3 or 4 days. I came from Santa Barbara, California, and you can't get much more historic than that, okay? From 1690 and on, the mission and everything else. And they thought about that same thing, city council down there, to remove it at the courthouse I was at and everything. They didn't want to have all this fencing and stuff like this. But I'll tell you, people get off on 66, like you say, and they'll go, wow, those are easy pickings. There are not nice people that come through town too, looking for easy pickings to go on down the road and sell it off to someone else. I would suggest that you look in the future, if they move out of downtown, then talk to the next people about not having their commercial vehicles parked down there and getting rid of the fencing like that. I don't suggest that you really look at telling people, hey, you gotta get your fence out of here right now and stuff, because it's not gonna go well. And the older homes that have the barbed wire fence, you know, talk to the people and say, you know, is there something else that you can use? Or if in the future their home is sold, that it comes with the nuance that a better, nicer fence would become instead of a 5-strand barbed wire fence, because they're not having their cows and sheep downtown anymore and everything. But if you got to look at both sides of the fence. Yes, the public, nice people come through here from China and Japan and stuff. I see them down here, and really we don't want to show them off. But there are other people that come through town looking for easy pickings too. And it's not fair to our commercial businesses to lose property and have their ladders stolen. I'm sure if you look at those trucks, they all have padlocks on them and double doors with padlocks and everything else, and that's to prevent someone else from taking something else from them that doesn't belong. And so I would just suggest that besides looking at the value of them not being there, but the value of for the business that provide taxes for the city.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion amongst us or direction we would like to?
No, very good point, sir. Appreciate the comments on it. I think that's one thing that's always tough, is trying to make sure that when you're looking at one thing in one direction, that you're taking into account the totality of what's around it. But for me, again, brought it up, I'm okay seeing if there's a communication we can make to the historic district and get their input on the subject. I like Scott's input too about maybe liaising with the business, and we can ask the question anyway. It doesn't hurt to ask that way. But definitely before making any solid recommendation one way or another, or requesting staff to bring back a text amendment, I think just getting the background information at this point and do a little more digging is, for me anyway, I'm comfortable with that at this time.
I think that's fair enough. So, thank you, Richard, Gary, and Sylvia, for your time. All righty, now we're on to old business and the discussion of tiny homes. We've had workshops on the tiny homes, and we discuss them amongst ourselves. And this is a continuation of discussion on tiny homes in regard to appearance, criteria, and placement. Sylvia?
Pulling up my PowerPoint really quick here. Okay, here we have the tiny homes discussion. Now, I did my best to compile a lot of information, yet still make it understandable, because we've actually expanded as we went along. But I also try to summarize it in my PowerPoint as well. Okay, so, as you mentioned, since November 2017, we've been presenting some discussion items related to tiny homes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Some of the topics we have discussed are what zoning districts tiny homes are allowed in, adding other zoning districts to allow tiny homes, allowing homes to be built on smaller 25 by 100 feet lots, use of cargo containers as building materials for tiny homes. At the last meeting, I was asked to seek input from the public, and so we held a public workshop. Oh, what's going on here? Sorry. But before I tell you the outcome of the workshop, I wanted to still remind you of what is currently allowed. So in our RR and RMH zoning districts, tiny homes are currently allowed because there is not a minimum floor area of 860 feet required in these zoning districts. New homes built in the zoning districts are not required to meet the development appearance criteria. Tiny homes can be built today in these zoning districts without sewer unless it is available within 500 feet and without an appearance criteria. So that's RR and RMH. In R2, tiny homes are not currently allowed because there is a minimum floor area of 860 feet required in this district. New homes built in this zoning district are required to meet the development appearance criteria. And just to note, cargo containers can be used as a building material in any zoning district, but must meet construction, must meet the building code, exterior appearance criteria in the associated zoning districts. Nope, we had a workshop on Wednesday, March 7th. Had a really good turnout, I would say. Lasted about an hour. Here's some of the comments we received back from the public. There should be appearance criteria for tiny homes in the downtown area was one concern. Can cargo containers be used to build tiny homes in the downtown area? There was a desire to promote infill by allowing construction of homes on smaller lots on the 25 by 100s. Questions about owner-builder requirements for tiny homes. Concern about tiny homes affecting property values, and density allowance and setback requirements for tiny homes. I also did some research for you. We did research Coconino and Pima County. And in Pima, they did adopt a tiny home policy, which I provided in your packet in around 2016. I did speak to a building inspector out there and kind of talked to him how things were going since the policy was adopted. And they kind of anticipated it to explode, but didn't realize it didn't with them in Pima County. Now, Coconino is a little different. They adopted a tiny home policy in December of 2017, and they have been seeing an increase of tiny homes, and they have a division for like sustainable building that has a lot of encouraging for tiny homes and other things. So they have a really nice program there. So they did adopt a policy, and they have seen an increase in homes, but they also said that they will be adopting Appendix Q out of the 2018 IRC, which specifically relates to tiny homes, and then amending their policy again to reflect more what this Appendix Q is saying. We also did a research of the lots in the downtown R2 zoning district, which is mainly in this area here. I think some people may think that there's a lot more multifamily in the downtown area, but really it's just between North 1st Street, North 4th Street, Elm, and Oak. So in this area, there were 18 lots that were less than 6,000 square feet that would be able to connect to sewer without a line extension. And out of these 18, there are actually 13 25 by 100-foot planted lots with 4 assessor parcel numbers. So they're still combined, basically. An additional 11 25 by 100 could be built on if the sewer was extended. Now, these parcels would have to be uncombined by the property owner if they desired to have individual 25 by 100 if that's what we wanted to do. And a majority of these vacant lots in this area were originally platted as 2,500 or 6,250 square feet. So going back to that, there really wasn't many lots available in that area as much as I was thinking myself once we did the research. So in the RR and RMH zoning district, the public, that was one comment we got, the public doesn't want to see their property value decrease if tiny homes were built next to their larger single-family residence. So in order to address this concern, staff recommends amending the RMH section for RMH 40, RMH 20, 10, 8, and the RR zoning district to not allow for tiny homes. And then tiny homes would still be allowed in the RMH 6 zoning districts, which is primarily located on the south side of the railroad tracks and behind KRMC. And this is kind of what it looks like, I guess, when you have a big home and small home next to each other. And then also a comment was made related to allowing for tiny homes to be built on the 25 by 100 lots in the RR and RMH zones. But upon further review, the general plan land use designations in these areas are primary medium density and low density residential, which wouldn't allow for the intensity if we did allow splitting in RR and RMH down to 25 by 100. So staff recommends to leave the current requirement of the zoning ordinance as is, which requires the minimum building site to be 5,000 square feet and a width of 50 feet. So that's for RR and RMH. And here's another comment that we received. There was a comment made at the public tiny home workshop that it may be an upgrade if tiny homes were constructed in the RMH 6 zoning districts, basically, the mobile versus tiny home. In the R2 zoning district, the general plan land use designation for the downtown area is intermediate density residential, which would allow for the density if the lots were split down to 25 by 100. The commission wants to allow the tiny homes to be built in the R2 zoning district. Staff recommends amending section 26 of the zoning ordinance to exempt the minimum floor area size requirement and the minimum building width of 24 feet for tiny homes in R2 zoning districts. And Section 4 would also need to be amended to allow for 25 by 100 lots to be built on individually. In the R2 zoning district, tiny homes would still have to meet the appearance criteria of Section 26, just like any other new single-family homes, duplexes, or triplexes do today. There are a few homes on Oak Street. Tiny homes could easily be made to look very similar by following the current appearance criteria in Section 26. Another thing I was thinking when people were making comments, they were for various areas of downtown. So I was thinking they didn't realize how small the area really is where these tiny homes could be built in the R2 zoning district. And they wouldn't be next to some of the bigger historic homes, basically. For commission action, the Planning and Zoning Commission may initiate a text amendment to sections 4, 5, 7, and 26 of the zoning ordinance to do the following. Not allow tiny homes in the RR and RMH 40, 20, 10, and 8 zoning districts. Allow tiny homes in the R2 zoning district. Allow tiny homes to be built on 25 by 100 lots in the R2 zoning district with the requirement that they need to connect to sewer. May ask me to bring back more research or may decide not to take any further action. So if you have any questions for me, I'm ready.
You're ready. Chair, Sylvia.
Ready.
Bullets are flying.
Yes, I agree. So, I also saw we had some nice pictures from Chairman McCoy.
That is from one of the TV show people down in Texas.
Okay.
And it used to be a shotgun house, actually, and they rebuilt it, and I believe it was the Fixer Upper program.
Oh, really? It looks really
And
nice.
they actually want $950,000 for that little tiny house,
Oh, yeah,
which is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
But it's just to show you that tiny houses don't have to be ugly.
No.
yeah, I do agree. It seems that we go straight to cargo containers when we talk about tiny homes, but there's a bit large variety available out there. We did get a lot of feedback. I did provide it to you with the emails from different people, and it kind of went down the same direction.
I got one question, Sylvia, on the, and I don't know how you pronounce it, Cochachino and.
Coconino?
Yeah, county.
Yes.
On their appendix Q of the 2018 IRC, what's that in regards to, and then, you know?
That is part of the building code, but that's where I call somebody up here. Help me with that. Yeah, that's where it comes. Yep.
That lifeline went out early on that one.
Yeah, she's been waiting for that. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and commission members. For those, the new ones that don't know me, I'm Keith Eaton. I'm Assistant Fire Chief, and I oversee the Building and Life Safety Division, which is the building department. So when we go through this, and we've spoke a couple times, and I think I did it at the workshop, the Appendix Q is specifically for tiny homes. One of the things that the other counties are doing, and we would have to do as far as the city, at present with our 2012 IRC code, we would have to adopt specifics to egress and size of bedrooms and that kind of thing. What the Appendix Q does is just takes it and puts it all into one appendix. That answers all those questions for us. So that is part of the 2012 or 2018 building codes that we're presently preparing right now to present, probably be adopting by the end of the year. So it's just a package.
So no matter what we do, that'll be implemented anyways?
Yes, yeah. And either way, whether that appendix, if we've adopted that or if we haven't adopted 2018 codes yet, these would still have to be built under the International Residential Code, either way. And they would, so we would have to make some allowances as far as the square footage and do that stuff, which we were prepared to do, which most all the counties have done. The tiny homes being such a big deal over the whole county, the International took the lead and just put it all into one code, which is really nice. And I can actually send that, it's not a huge appendix, I could send that out to you guys if you'd like to have a copy of it.
I got a copy of Q.
Oh, the Q?
Of Q.
Okay, well, very good. You guys have got a copy of it.
Thank you, Keith.
All right, absolutely.
I have a
Thank you.
question for you, Keith. On these tiny homes, the city, have you been seeing like permits coming in requesting to like live in these sheds, you know, that you see like on Northern, going out towards Golden Valley? Have you been?
As far as the manufactured sheds, like what they would bring
Well,
on
they're
to?
kind of like on the same line as the tough sheds.
Yeah.
You know, where they want to change them and make them into like single-family
Right,
residences.
we have not. And I think the most, and Sylvia kind of addressed this in the beginning, and we've addressed this all along, is that when this came about, it was trying to do something with these small infill lots downtown. Because presently, you can't do anything. So there's a lot of 25-foot lots, well, a lot being 13, I think, or 18 that can actually hook to sewer right now. But that was the question, and trying, what can they do? Because presently, they couldn't build anything on it, and they're just setting, and make more affordable housing downtown. That was kind of the driver of all this when Sylvia started doing her research, and we kind of teamed up on this. I don't foresee that we're gonna have people beating down our door for these. Once in a while, we'll have a call on them. But I think what it does when we do allow it, I think we'll see some. But we haven't seen that, which those could be, as long as they're built into those parameters. And then of course, we get into the connexes, and we discussed that a little bit. There was two major things that came out of that, and it was, the big thing was the appearance. People didn't want a connex moved in next to them. The connex has to look like the house, the rest of it. The code presently allows for a connex to be used for building materials. So they move a connex, so the structure of the walls, everything else can be used. Now, it has to be covered under the appearance criteria in the area. So at the end of the day, it still has to look like a house, if that's what you want to use it for. So that's a whole different subject. But as far as, you know, we just had, we get a call once in a while, but not a lot. But I would predict that we would get a few
Yeah,
people wanting to look.
I've been seeing quite a few at the county.
On the Connex.
Yes.
I've done a little bit of research when I was in Winnemucca about the Connex, the container homes, and there's goods and bads about them.
Could you please,
I'm sorry.
There's a time when you,
there's a time and we'll get to
when you
during
can't
this.
talk
Give us a
about
few
it.
minutes,
It
sir.
just isn't at the right spot.
Okay, I'll continue. We have been seeing quite an influx, like on these, what you call like the sheds, where they're wanting to convert them into tiny homes. And it says right on, you know, the engineered plans that, you know, it's not designed for living, you know, structure. But they're trying to convert them. So that's why I was asking if the city has seen, you know, those coming in.
I haven't had any of those yet. And they would have to be structured that way if they were.
single-family
They would
residence.
either have to restructure them or add to it, or if they're being built that way. But I've seen them and I've thought about that. I know some people that kind of move them out in the middle of the nowhere on their land, out in the woods, and live in them. But we haven't had anything yet.
Keith, I'm assuming on the 5 out of the 18 homes, a person couldn't put in a septic tank because the lots aren't wide enough anyway, so we could kind of, I'm assuming, take that out of the equation?
Yes, yeah, and actually that's the whole deal with these 25-foot lots, and they do have to be on sewer. You couldn't put a septic on that and with the setbacks and everything else, so that's why they would have to be on sewer.
Yeah.
So when Sylvia done the research, that she only researched the sewer areas, or sewer that could be connected to. I think there was a few that if the sewer was extended. Yeah, but that would be absolutely, they would have to have city water and city sewer.
Right. Ready? Any further questions?
I just have one. So on the 13 lots that you identified that are available, if past this and we go with the recommendations or suggestions, are they all connected to each other, or are they checkerboarded throughout that district?
Yeah, there's 4 that have the same APN, and so basically there'd be little chunks and then a house built and then a little chunk of lots available. And as a reminder, the ones that we could go down to the 25 by 100 would have to meet the appearance criteria. So that would be similar to the downtown area.
So you have an existing, I'll say, normal sized home, and then you have this small piece of land in between another existing normal sized home. So it's looking at a way to use that piece of land in between that's not
Yes.
currently used.
Yes. And then the area is zoned for multifamily already anyway, but yes, that's correct.
And then on that map you gave us as part of our Sandy gave us part of our packet there, we have it circled right there as R2. It's that specific area right there where
Yes.
checkerboarded in throughout there, there's 13 areas that could.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Some of those normal-sized houses are probably only 400 or 500 square feet anyway.
That's why, yeah, true.
Being as old as some of them are. So.
Any further questions of staff?
Anything to add on the research you did on that part, on the R2 area when you were checking for me?
No, I think you said it correctly. That
Okay.
They're scattered throughout that area. There is one parcel that has a big 425 by 100 lots. They're all in through.
In one parcel.
Most of it's scattered throughout.
I hired help for some research on that part.
Thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I have one question. If I understand this correctly, you could proposed build on 25 foot, and if there's a 50 foot available, that isn't going to be split, it can be built on the 50 foot, is that
Yes,
correct?
that could be done.
As long as
today.
it
I mean,
either has utilities or can accommodate a septic system.
right, that is correct. And so with kind of refresher, let me just go back to one. So for the R2 zone, we would need to amend so that the allowance for the minimum square foot of the home would be allowed to be under the 860. They would meet the development appearance criteria already. And if we allowed for the 25 by 100 foot lots, they'd have to connect to sewer. Otherwise, yes, they could use the 50 by 100. And if sewer is available within 500 feet, though, that's already a policy that they have to connect to sewer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions?
I noticed that a couple of the counties adopted basically their amendments that if they are brought in or brought in, they would be classified as a mobile home and be treated like a mobile home. So if they're prefabbed off-site and brought in and hooked up, they would be treated that way. If they are built on-site with materials, they'd be classified as, so we're not allowing them to have them prefabbed off. They would have to be built on-site, correct? Under our zoning and our,
I think we have to make the definition.
Well, and that was, and I'm glad you brought that, Commissioner DeVries. So that was one of the concerns, that somebody wanted to build it off and then trailer it in and do all that. It falls back under the modular home section that would have to be licensed, built and licensed by the manufactured housing. So yeah, these would be all site built. So it would. Now, it would sell a tiny home still on wheels, the way that the ordinance reads. They have to be in a park anyway. And so, but that's kind of now there's part of areas that could be prefabbed on the house itself, but not the whole thing brought in and just set down on blocks. No, it'd have to be built.
okay, thank you.
Could one potentially be built off-site, brought in, set onto a concrete slab, and then anchored to the slab?
Well, no.
Okay.
No, not in that area. So that still goes back into the manufactured housing legalities. So they would actually oversee the building of that. Now, it could be prefabbed to where all the walls are built, floors built, everything else, they bring it in and then they set it on top of the, build it there, on site built. But they would all be site built that way. But if it, like I say, if it has wheels, then it's got to be in a parking lot.
And I have a question, and I don't know if I missed this or not, but so are the setbacks different?
Yeah, you want to address the setbacks on?
Setbacks would still remain what is effective in the R2 zoning district. So I think we had 5 on each side, if I'm not mistaken, and 15 in the rear.
15 in behind?
Yeah, 20 in the front, yeah. Those are it. Yeah, so they would have to meet the
They still have to meet the
setbacks.
setbacks, same way as the 50 by 100?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So the other thing is that once we know which direction we want to go, we'd like to make a similar policy for us to guide applicants and ourselves probably too, to look at.
Any further questions? Staff?
Yeah, one more, if you don't mind. Assuming there are some changes, at some point in time, if somebody wanted to, if a developer wanted to come to Kingman and build a PDD that would be of tiny homes, changing anything here today or in the future would not prevent that, correct?
Right, for PDD, yeah,
Yeah.
we'd be reviewing it and bringing it back. Yep,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. Good?
Thank you,
Okay.
Sylvia.
You're welcome.
All righty, may I open it up to any comments from the public? State your name again, please.
Wes Maroney, would we allow the tiny homes to go into motorhome parks? Instead of somebody bringing in their 25-foot trailer or double wide, they could bring in a tiny home?
I think they already can, I think.
To an RV park?
Park model? Park model?
Like a road RV park, like
Yeah.
a KOA?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And they do, actually, the KOA has some
They
of
already
the
have
small
those.
cabins and that.
Park
kind of thing.
models.
That falls onto private property then.
Okay, then that's all right. Okay, I'm with that. I did watch one of those tiny home things where they build it and they slide it onto a trailer, haul it out to the place, and then finish assembling it. Is that in our, that they could do that?
They can, and that would be when you start finish assembling. So the majority of the construction's done on site when they.
Should that be written into the rules too, that they?
I think that, I'm not sure.
That still falls under a site-built home. That's a modular, and that still would fall under a site-built
Okay.
home, because it's actually being built like a site-built home, not a manufactured home. And that would be brought in as a site-built home and set down on a concrete
Yeah.
slab.
I'm just thinking, I don't want to cheat anybody out of having a little home, but I really don't want to have little bitty homes in nice areas too. And so that was just my question to, thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Any further questions from? Please come and state your name.
My name is Jamie Fitzner, and I just want to make a couple comments concerning the convex homes that have been converted to, regular homes. I could be wrong, but I don't think you'll see a lot of that because there's a lot of extra cost. You have to have a plasma cutter to cut out the windows and cut out the doors. And then from ground up inside, you have to redesign your plumbing and your electrical and all that. So I don't see that people would do that, but I could be wrong. So I mean, it's been done, because some people like the steel structure and that sort of thing. But for the average person to buy a plasma cutter, I've owned one in the past, they're very pricey to buy. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Any further questions?
I'm
I see none. I'm going to open it up to the staff, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make a comment regarding what Jamie had shared, that when you're dealing with those Cantex, those Connex boxes, to redesign those into a home is supposed to be very expensive from what I've talked to people, but they're not limited to that, right? If when they approve this, or if they approve that, you can just build a basic structure that conforms to the guidelines of the building codes and stuff, and then make it, the aesthetics look like, up here, which can deteriorate if not built, quality, of course, but those, trying to make those into a home is very expensive from what I've heard. I don't know. As a comment.
Open discussion. wants this.
Obviously, I'm in favor of tiny homes, with the caveat that they should have, and should be required to have, some type of exterior appearance criteria, so we don't end up with a little doghouse-looking square box with a roof on it, and that's all we end up with. Something like this is grand, or something similar to that. And I'm not sure how you're going to put that in an ordinance or so.
I'm in agreement with you, because I know you, Elizabeth, Vicki, myself, I know we were at that workshop, and we heard it loud and clear from all people that did speak, that appearance criteria is really important to them, and I think probably most of us would probably be in agreement to ourselves, that appearance, I think, to the surrounding areas that we are putting these into, or these will be going into, I think is a big, on the checkbox.
The requirement that they are similar to what's in the neighborhood may not be a good thing, considering what some of the neighborhoods look like. So keep that in mind, whatever that language turns out to be.
Keith or Sylvia, that is a good question. As Scott points out, and where we have these circled in that area, how would we as the commission and members here address that? Because we do have homes that aren't, in some people's eyes, kept up to the best standards, and so do we go by the architectural appearance?
Well, I'm thinking of a few things, because people can build a house today with our current appearance criteria, and that's what's happening now. So if you want to add architectural standards and stuff to the tiny homes and stuff, it would be for all the homes going in from this point on. So I'm not sure if that's the direction we want to go or not. It's kind of something I'll need some guidance with too. And the other thing I keep hearing is appearance criteria too. So in our RMH6 zone, if we were to allow tiny homes in the RMH6 zoning district, the appearance criteria doesn't apply there. So if we want to add that the tiny homes in those districts need to meet appearance criteria, those are things we need to know, so I can try to amend the text to reflect that. It's possible you guys want the development criteria expanded to not exclude our RMH zones. So it's another thought too. But getting back to architectural designs, for these particular, I'm not sure if that's where you want to go for the 13 to 24 possible lots we have to build on or not, but it is something we can talk about as a whole for future developments.
So the Wallapai Mountain Road corridor
Yes.
is under a design review
There's an overlay district.
umbrella, okay?
Correct, yeah.
So essentially, someone wants to build there, it has to look like
Yep.
Santa Fe style or,
I understand what you're saying, and then yet we're kind of in the early parts of maybe expanding our historic overlay district, which those are things that would come into that as well, is appearance criteria for new buildings in the area and committee as well, if I'm not mistaken. When you expand the historic overlay district for new homes, they'd have to be reviewed by committee. So there's a couple moving things happening at one time, but for this particular situation, I'm not sure if you want to address this now or wait for the expansion of the overlay district, or...
I have just more or less a comment. Is there any grants available for block grants or any kind of R Street grants available for those historical areas in those revitalization of the existing homes? I'm to know it's no secret I'm not in favor of a bunch of tiny homes going up because of a lot of reasons. And one is already before us. We've got a district area of smaller homes that are not being maintained or have not been maintained. People are starting to buy them up. They're starting to restore them.
They are.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is there grants available for these people to continue buying up what's there so that as we move into snow is coming anyways, that we can look at it as a bigger picture, not just an individual house here, here, or here, but is there something available from the government that allows us to take a whole area and say, you already own this home, there's monies available for you because of your income level to start revitalizing this downtown historic area.
Right. Now, I only know this because we work with our coworker, who's Bill Schilling in the historic, and he works a lot with the historic preservation. Now, he's the one I would probably ask this question because he does a lot of our searching for grants and finding out what's available out there. So I'd have to ask him to see if something like that is available.
Because I was part of the Block Street, the R Street program from the community that I came from, where we had an entire historical area that had literally ended up in the same situation. And because of the block grants that they got in, and we were able to go in with individual homeowners and put in driveways, redo sewer, do exterior, put in landscaping, all the things that needed to give that curb appeal that we needed with some interior revitalization as well, bringing electrical up to code. It was amazing, the turnaround of an entire district. Those houses skyrocketed in value. So,
And then I understand what you're saying, and I'm thinking that's something we discussed about too, maybe bringing the two commissions for like a joint meeting with, because there's some similar goals that could be discussed among the two and try to reach those goals together. And I'm just thinking also that many times when the new homes are built, sometimes it spurs other, like the next door neighbor to say, oh, well, that looks really nice. I need to start, picking mine up too. It's possible that could happen too. But we're talking, it really is not a lot of lots in that R2 zoning
it's not a lot of
district.
lots, but it's a big area of homes that are already there, and I guess that's what I'm saying. We're going to kind of look at it outside the box, per se.
Yeah, I got you.
I had some comments that were shared with me, and I guess I'm wondering how long statistically have they done any, how long they stay in these owners that purchase these, put them in and build them up. How long do they stay? Because I have a lot of people that, want to sell their, 1,500 square foot home and travel, and that lasts about, in a small, in a RV, lasts about 4 months.
Right. Right. I think,
And what happens afterwards to the home is is the concern that's been coming up, and I think that was brought up to Commissioner Goss also, right?
the only
I was just wondering.
background I have from that was when I contacted Coconino County and their experience there. And their experience was they had different people getting tiny homes for various reasons, such as like maybe educators that are there temporarily, or nurses, not so much doctors, but just temporary medical staff that was only trying to live in an area for so long, and they liked the tiny homes, and then people that just wanted to do the tiny home movement thing. So there's various reasons. I don't know how long people are living them at this point. Yeah.
That'd be a good thing to find out, though, I think, because what happens afterwards may be rental.
Yeah, and I think that's possible even with homes being built now, with rentals. Well, I'm ready for like any suggestions maybe if there's some part of this recommendation that you do like, maybe we can start with that, with what we agree upon.
I do so bad. I'm open for other people's comments as well, but when you have, in the commission action recommendations here, I'd be perfectly in favor of having a definition for tiny homes, so at least get it out there, define this is what it is, so there's no confusion on what's in that category one. So I think a definition is a good idea. I don't know if that brings up the subject of connexes or not inside there, but anyway, definition would be good to know. So what are we talking about?
Okay.
It sounds like you got pretty good public feedback for letter B on there for some of the different size residential where you had some feedback. People didn't want them in their existing subdivisions
Correct.
or homes that way, so I'm not, you have that up there. I don't think I'm opposed to that as well. I would be in favor of that. It's the bottom two, I'm not sure on C and D, on there where, I guess D would have to happen around the connection to the sewer. We're saying we can't fit a septic on some of those smaller sized lots. On the smaller sized lots anyway, you couldn't. Ergo, have to be hooked up to sewer.
On B?
Yeah, on D,
or-
on D
I'm
at the
sorry,
very bottom
D?
where you have D there.
Correct, they'd have to be connected to
So
sewer.
they have to be connected to sewer, so that's, I guess in some respects, if we move forward with the others, that has to happen.
Right. So that one's okay.
And it almost sounds like C is almost a definition type one you have on there too, about to exempt them from the minimum square footage. In effect, if you define a tiny home off the bat, whatever the particulars on that definition come out to be, I would assume that would have to.
600 square feet, wasn't it?
I can't, I read the background on there today on the other two.
Which one?
I don't know really what a definition of a tiny
Yeah,
home is.
should be,
It's-
right.
Well, that, and let me see, I thought Q had, like, the building code had a lot of this, what they defined it to. I gotta check again. Tiny house, they put a dwelling which is 400 or less square feet and floor area excluding lofts. And that's kind of the direction Coconino is going, is they're gonna try to follow what's allowed by the building code definition and things like that.
I mean, I think a proposed definition's not a bad idea. Start there to have you guys draft a proposed definition, and then we can consider that in the public. Other people can weigh in on that. Do they agree, disagree, whatnot
Right.
for it? And thinking to try and act on some of that public feedback you guys had from the workshop, I do think that one you have up on top there, which is B, on their recommendation for those larger size subdivision lots, I could be in favor of putting
Also, I can provide a map next time of the lots that are available in the R2, if that will help your decision as well. Bring it back with the text amendment, like as a backup.
Would it behoove us to have a workshop with the Historical Commission?
I don't think it has to happen before these amendments. I still think we can go forward with the tiny home amendments, yet we still need to work on like the preservation of the existing homes in downtown and talk about grants and things like that. That we can still do, but separate from this probably.
Right.
I do think anything less than 450, 500 square feet is unrealistic to live in it. It's just like living in a shed.
Right.
So
Bullhead had 600.
I wouldn't go below was 450 feet if it was me, and then go up from there. But
it is, those shows that we're referring to in these pictures, aren't some of those, aren't those?
well,
Some of them are tiny.
Yeah, I know.
for me, there should be a differential between a site-built tiny home and a portable tiny home. There are the ones on the little trailers that are
Right.
200 feet or less.
I know, I wonder myself, but,
And to me, that's a travel trailer that's not a tiny home.
right.
So a site-built tiny home, you could go too small, and then it's really doesn't make any sense.
Well, if I could just add, and I know what you guys are trying to do, and I appreciate that, but I think that what the International Code Council has done with this Appendix Q is to wrap all this stuff in it with the definition and everything else. So what we would do when we adopt the Appendix Q, whether it's with the whole 2018 code, or we can adopt just that section if it's going to be delayed more than a year or something like that. So I think what that does, if you go down through it, it's kind of a very short amendment to it, but it wraps everything all the concerns that you've got up into it. And keep in mind that these have to be built under the International Residential Code, period.
Anyways.
They have to, yeah. So when you're talking, and one of the gentlemen that was here on more than one occasion throughout the workshop his concern was the appearance. And talking about the different appearance criteria. Now, if you look downtown, there's a lot of different appearance criterias. You know, I mean, they all don't look like Craftsman home, or they don't all look like stucco homes or anything like that. So when you start shrinking down that appearance criteria, that also is, when you adopt that, that's also adaptable to the other homes going in, every home going in, whether it's a tiny home or not. One of the things, and I have had a question, Commission Member Keith, I have talked to people about whether the people are leaving these things and just going, well, these things are still costing, you know, $40,000 or so when they get done building them. A lot of people do, and they do it, and Sylvia had mentioned it, in a hospital area. They build them and then they rent them out to nurses, traveling nurses and things like that. It's still the same criteria if somebody just wants to build a regular house and rent out to the nurses. It's just it's a tiny home. One of the things just to keep in mind that those are, you know, they're going to get a permit. We're going to inspect them. They're just like a house. They're just smaller. So we will monitor a lot of that stuff. Now, we don't have any way of, just like we don't in the houses now, a 2,500 square foot house. What happens when the people move out? I mean, we don't have anything, you know, we can't do anything with that. I mean, other than when it gets down to neighborhood services, when it's really getting bad. But it really is not a different house than a 2,500 square foot house, only it's small. So.
Well, I think that you're looking still at 5-foot setbacks on each side, so the maximum you're gonna have a living space inside is 14 wide, after you have your, you know, construction and stuff, so it'd be like 14 wide, and then if you're looking at a 600-foot home, you're looking at 40 feet deep.
Right.
And so I think that's the concern that people might not wanna, you know, you're not looking at this. This is 75 by 100 probably, or whatever. You know
Well,
what I mean?
actually, that's not. That's only like 24 feet, 25 feet wide.
Feet by, 6
This is a 25-foot wide.
That's it?
Yeah,
There's 5 feet on each side here?
yeah.
I have no idea about the lot size, but the building size.
The building, no, I'm just
And
talking
they
about
go
lot
up,
size
it's a
is
story and a
25.
half, or a two-story. I mean,
Right,
there's
so then
people
you're only
that do
gonna
that.
have 5 foot on each side and 14 livable inside. The
14
rest is
livable,
just gonna be a deep, long skinny house, just saying. And you're not gonna have the width, this can't be 5 feet on each side.
Yeah, I don't
No,
know.
that lot is a lot larger.
Yeah, it's a lot larger. So I was just sharing with them, it isn't gonna be, you know, it's not gonna be like this.
Yeah, it's not going to be aesthetically looking like this at all.
Yeah, it's
Because you're
just
not
gonna
going
be
to have a
long.
drive-through
It's just a
gate on a 25-foot lot.
Well, and I think we might be surprised. I mean, I don't know. And when you look at the people that I know that are interested in filling downtown, it's more of affluent, you know, type people just wanting to build stuff and make the downtown, you know, continually make the downtown
A little different stuff.
look different like that.
No, I understand
I
that.
don't know that you're, you know, when they build it, I don't think you're going to look at, it's not a shack. We will not allow a shack to be built for the code. It still has to have correct siding, roofing, everything else to it. But there was, and I think that the appearance criteria that's present in there kind of takes care of that. So.
On those lots down there right now, some of those houses that you showed, are those the 25 by 100 lots as well?
Where, in R2?
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
so the houses that were like side by side, estimated about 500 square feet, those houses? Keith?
Yeah, this,
You thinking?
Down here?
these like
Yeah.
ways.
Are they about 500 square feet, or are they a little bit
Well,
more than
they're
that?
probably a little bigger than that, but probably not a lot. They're barely, some of them are barely 1,000 square foot. It's-
Barely 500 feet. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not very big.
Yeah, some of those, yeah. So there's some pretty small homes downtown too.
Well, I know, and that's why I was, because the
Non-conforming.
criteria of something like that, I think is where we need to kind of stay. And then maybe look at meeting with the historical and looking at a revitalization of that entire area, so that when we're done putting these little pockets of tiny homes, it kind of goes into the other pockets of older tiny homes that are already existing and kind of build from there. And aesthetically for our community, I think in the long haul, to revitalize it would be great.
Well, I think you're looking at a lot of difference in taking some of the old homes that you were talking about earlier, that were just had run down and everything else. So you take the cost of building a tiny home on top of remodeling a house like that. That's probably some of the cost, and people not want to sell their home or think it's worth a whole lot of money. That's why they're not getting bought up downtown. Ms. Keith, you could certainly answer that.
Yeah.
So we do have an appearance criteria on the books already in, as I'm reading, section 26.
Yes.
So there is guidelines if someone right now to build a tiny home downtown.
There's guidelines, yeah.
Yeah,
What?
yeah, I think I'm still on A and B for the recommendations because I think if we get some area going in the community where if it's downtown, we get
That's
an
where
area
you
and say,
want
yeah, this is where you want to start, and you get a couple applications to come through and someone actually does one. I think a lot of the comments we have at this point are conceptual, but until you actually see something get up and going, then I think it's a lot easier, and even for the community to say, okay, I like that, here's what I do like, here's what I don't like. So the reason I like about A and B that Sylvia proposed in there is it would, I believe, kind of limit it to a small area off the bat, and then we get a couple come through, you get to see a few come through from a building standpoint, and
Right.
after you get 3 or 4 come through, then you'll have a feel for, oh, hey, we missed on that one, or no, hey, that's actually going pretty well. Maybe we want to talk about opening it back up to a large area, but I do like the recommendations you have in there because we kind of lock it down
Yeah.
now and then go from there.
Right, and then even with the RMH, with the RMH 6, really there's only that limited
Right.
amount behind KRMC and across the tracks, because most of the other places are already
And
filled in
the other thing I
already.
like, Sylvia, if we get someone to come in, say, again, we've seen some historic areas in Alabama, we lived in the southeast where they did these whole communities that were a complete throwback to the 20s, but they planned that community out that way. So if we have it locked down that way and someone comes in, developer, and says, hey, I'd like to take this tract of land over here, X amount of acres, and we're going to do a tiny home community, and here's how it's all planned out, I think I'd be okay, well, then you go back the other way. Yep, that sounds good. Looks like what we're looking for. We can put that through and approve that specific spot to open it up that way where we know it's
Right.
planned that way,
Right.
as opposed to having it just come through. So, but at least that's
Yeah,
my
no,
thoughts.
I agree. I think that's a good idea.
Great.
That's good.
So I know what to do with A and B. D was okay, right?
Yeah, D. I don't
D's
see how
fine,
D.
so
I think
C-
you have to do D. That's a must. If we're already going down that route on our RMH 6, then you got to do D.
Right.
Would C come along if you make a definition? I mean, obviously there's some other guidance out there on what definitions could be, but I would, in some respects, that would get cleaned up with the definition.
Okay. Yeah, like, I did see Pima, they just defined it as tiny homes, maximum of 400 square foot, but yet Coconino said, maximum of 400, but minimum of 200. So we could go either way like that. But,
Well, I guess,
Well, am I reading C wrong? If you had a minimum building width of 24 feet, they wouldn't fit on these.
that,
Well, you're
that
exempt.
was,
That's the standard now, is
Yeah.
24 feet.
take it out so that they
yeah, I guess in
could-
some respects, if we're going to do it down there on a 25 by 100,
Yeah.
and you got 5-foot setbacks, you have to exempt that
I
as
do
well.
have
Otherwise,
to
you can't,
exempt that, right?
couldn't build it there. Okay.
Correct. So
but you have
that
to do
part
them
was
all.
easy. Yeah, it was just the size, I think, what you're saying with the definition. So if I get a definition, maybe with some good backup to why I'm giving you that size, then probably C would work better for you, like you said.
And I think the sticking point is to the size.
Right, that's
What
what
that
I'm
minimum
hearing,
size is going to
size.
be.
Size and appearance is kind of what,
Right.
With the size of the tiny homes and the size of the lots, maybe the tiny homes should be set back further on the lot. That way there's room for parking.
Good point.
Yeah, because there's not going to be any parking if you only have 20 feet in the front. That would be parking in the street, so they have that lot, have it set back a little bit further to allow for
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, like, because the homes, like, if a home was built today, that would be the setback and there's parking. I'm trying
They
to
have a
just-
garage, right?
Not always.
Or,
Some have lean-tos or just like a
I
carport.
think she's saying if it's set back, the next door neighbor doesn't have to stare down into, if it's set back a little bit, maybe the other property owners don't.
All of these homes down in the downtown area, most of them have parking in the back, right?
yeah.
They come in from
Yeah, and this
from
is
Or on the
Oak
street.
Street.
or on the street, which is what we're gonna end up with, is parking on the street. A lot of that's already zoned that way, and I think the criteria of the homes that are already in that area at that 500 square foot, I just think we just need to kind of keep aesthetically along the same lines so that you're not affecting property value one way or another
Yeah.
down the road.
Is there alleys where they can park in the?
I drove around that area to see what was available, and pretty much there won't be any street parking on any of those lots that are available, considering where they're located. So it would most likely have off-street parking, and
Right, it's required. Yeah, and if there's, if the neighborhood generally has garages and carports, that's what would be required. Well,
which is not gonna work on a tiny house.
It's not gonna work
they
on
might
that
have it,
lot.
we still require a parking space.
Yeah, would,
That's why she was
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
the setback needs to
Okay.
accommodate a car to accommodate the parking space in
Okay.
front of the house.
I am come around now.
All right.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion for this, or just?
Yeah,
You draft them? We
if you would like me to come back with the proposed text amendments, you need to make a motion to do that, and then I will bring back drafts
Okay.
that we can discuss, but I know which way we're going, at least.
I'm going to ask for a motion.
Okay. I'll make a motion for staff, direct staff to come back and bring us a draft text amendment as written in item 3 here on the commission action section, A, B, C, and D.
I'll second.
All righty, we have a motion, and a second has been made. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Sylvia,
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Sylvia.
and thank you all for your hard work. Commissioners' comments. Limited to announcements, availability, attendance at conferences and seminars, requests for agenda items for future meetings, and requests for reports from staff.
Don't you think we put enough on them already? Why would you want to do that?
Well, I have one. Sylvia, I'd like to see if we can get some information on elevations for tract housing developments, what other cities are doing and what we can do.
I have one, but this is borderline, so I apologize for doing it, but I'll be quick. Just because 3 weekends ago, I had a chance to go to Container Park down in Old Vegas with the family. And because the Connex subject around tiny homes and all that. And I actually was wildly impressed. I mean, it really was. I went into the one establishment my wife and I did to get a glass of wine, and it felt like Blackbridge. I mean, it was really nice, and you had to work hard to figure. In some cases, where the Connex aspect was. So, but this is where the story. So, 16-year-old daughter though walked through, looking around. My wife and I are taking pictures, and she looks and she goes, "Hey, Dad, forget it. Kingman could never pull this off." And I looked at her and I'm like, "What?" She's like, "No way." I'm like, okay. So that bothered me to the point of making it a goal to make sure that we can pull off stuff like that in the future. And I think that if we keep moving, I mean, I know that you got to take input back and forth and everything, but I still think if we keep moving in the right direction on some of these things here, a place like that could be done. And could be unique and new and take advantage of some of these things coming down the line for it. But I was impressed by it, and it would be awesome if we could get that type of investment in the city or that type of development in the right place with the right thing and have some of that. Because there were a lot of people walking around it, and retail was being used there. There were some retail shops in there we walked into. It was kind of neat, so keep pushing.
you know, they have companies now that are, well, like we did on the storage building the other day, that are designing Connex boxes to be houses, and you can just
It was nice.
pretty much order what you want, and there you go.
I was in the other extreme on that particular subject, but I was trying to keep an open mind when I walked around there.
That's good.
I have one other, and it'd just be a wish list, and when we do hopefully get our ordinances revamped and looked at, if there's any language or anywhere where, I don't know how you'd really put this, landscaping and right-of-way, track of homes where, good example, it's Central and Southern, we have between the sidewalk and the property lines, the right-of-way, there's no landscaping, we got weeds. I know throughout the city, it'd just be a wish list, for the future,
Yeah,
I think, to beautify
that's important.
our cities. I ride around quite a bit, and I see these, and I see people just doing something on their own property, or the city's property, really, themselves, trying to beautify it, and I think it's something, hopefully, in the wish list.
And I don't know, and what about the bars in the windows?
Pardon? I can't
What
hear.
about bars in the windows? How do we address that?
Oh.
I mean, I would like to open that for discussion, or whatever, have them talk about that.
That would be something that you would
Yes,
have to
staff
ask
to do
staff
I'm
to.
a little new to this, but I think it's important. I was just going through a city with my family, and we had to get backup because it was concerning because, the bars were everywhere. As soon as you start driving and you start seeing the bars, naturally you think, we're going through the bad area, we're going through, you know what I mean? Like, this is bad, this is bad. I just think it really brings a bad impression on the, I just was mentioning that bars in the window. I don't know how to get information, get some information about if there's anything in the ordinance regarding bars on the windows, just because that sends a really bad impression I think to people when they're going through and seeing bars everywhere, like on the windows. So, in general, thank you. So, I'm a little new on that, but I thought that would be an important thing to help me out here.
Rich, is that something you guys could take a look at? See, I'm not sure if that's called out anywhere or not, or.
I don't know unless it's, egress or anything.
It would only be an issue on residential for us. We have codes that show,
No,
on residential, we have codes.
we can't discuss it if it's not
Okay.
public.
All right, very good.
My bad.
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
I'm just wondering if there was an ordinance.
Yeah.
It's not yet.
You're just asking, you want to
I'm
ask staff for
at
research.
staff to research if there's anything that
See what
prevents
the
it,
ordinances are.
Yeah.
And see how we can look at it and.
to preserve what we have already.
All righty. And I didn't do this in the beginning, but I would like to welcome Mr. Gary Kellogg, our new economic director for the city. Welcome aboard, and thank you for everything you've been involved with so far and our guidance.
I think I will be official on May 9th. That's what they've told me. So what I wanted to just say, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, a lot of you don't see the behind-the-scenes work, and so I really have to take my hat off to these two and Sandy, because there's a lot of time that they spend in just pure research, and it really gets tough. So one of the things I would certainly like to invite you all down to is to see our new headquarters. We've just about completed the remodel downstairs, and the idea is to make it so that both Sylvia and Rich and Bill have an area in the back where they can really do their work, and we can take care of our clients in the front. And so now Sandy's area is all set up for that now, and so I know, Gary, you've been down there and seen it. So we're just about tweaking the last few things, and we even included the bathrooms and everything to bring it kind of all up to, a nice standard. So again, it's just that I wanted them to have the place where it can have the quiet time. So we will meet clients, and we have a conference room to do that in now. And the counter has been designed with everything. So when you come in and sit at the counter, you can have they can pull up on the computer everything, the phone's there, and turn around and grab the copies off the printer, so it'll make it a really nice atmosphere for them, so. For some reason, I'm losing my voice.
I gotta commend you on bringing us up to the 21st century. It's really fantastic, and I know Sandy's in heaven. She's gonna be working here another 50 years because she loves her little office space, and I know Sylvia, talking with Sylvia and Richard, thank you very much for them.
You're quite welcome. I just feel it my job to find the resources to make their job easier. And so if I do that, then they have the time and they'll like coming to work. And so we've spent a lot of time here. We should make it as nice as we can, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions you have?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I need to have a motion be made for adjournment.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I second the motion.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. Is any for further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.